Hey everyone, we're back. My messy desktop. I'm gonna make sure my folder is in order with the baby I want in there. This one's named the same. I'll just overwrite that one. I don't want to keep that one. Okay, so I'm gonna open up After Effects. And in this video, we're going to talk about the nature of compositions. I am going to try and, I saw my last video was 13 minutes. I'm going to try and beat that. I'm going to try and make them 5 minutes. I'm going to try not to talk too fast because these concepts are important and will help. But then again, I know watching long videos is annoying. So I'm going to open up After Effects. Again, I have 2020. And we're going to bring in our assets and talk about the different things we're bringing in for this project. Okay, I'm going to create a new project. Okay, it's right here. So I'm going to create my first composition. Now, a composition is sort of like a generic term within After Effects, but it basically represents anything with a timeline. And we're going to be working with a couple of different ones, right? We're going to have our main movie comp. I'll probably use that interchangeably, comp or composition. And then we'll have our character compositions. And the characters will have a composition because we want to do some animation on their timeline. Remember, the pieces that we have, that needs time, right? We need time, movement over time to do that. So because they need a timeline, we'll bring them in as compositions and we'll retain their layer sizes so that the arm size is relative to that chunk of arm as opposed to the full canvas. Okay. So again, we've got a robots folder. So first thing I'm going to do, I don't always remember to do this, but it's good practice, right? I'm going to save this project into that folder so everything is together. So File, Save As. I'm just going to call it like Robot Movie. And I am nowhere in the area I want to be, right? I was working in this earlier probably, so I'm going to always be aware of where you're saving to, right? I know I'm just off my desktop right now, not deep within my classes. So robots, and then robot movie, and we'll save it there. Okay, the composition we want is there's a setting that matches, not custom right now, our intentionally sized space background, right? And that is HDTV 1080 25. Okay, 25 represents the frames per second, right? And it's an animation. We don't have any live action footage in there. And the canvas size is 1920 by 1080. Let's name this composition here is going to be our main movie, right? So we'll just call it main movie, just to be really, hit yourself over the head with it. So that's one comp. Okay. So we don't have any assets in yet, and we need to import them. Notice over here is where our project assets are. Down here is our timeline. We have nothing in there yet, so we'll eventually have layers. And here is where we see what we're creating over here in the composition area. Okay, so I'm going to double click here on the left. I'm going to bring everything in one at a time, and we'll take a look at how they come in. So the JPEG, right? It's just a JPEG. It's just going to sit in the background. We don't need to do anything with it. So just this base import is fine, right? It's going to come in as footage, but it's just going to be a flat layer. And click open. And you'll notice it does not create any sort of composition here, right? We don't want to animate it. There's no layers on it. I mean, we could scale that, but there's nothing like complex going on within that because it's just one layer. So that came in as just the JPEG layer. And that is going to be the background to our movie. So I'm simply going to drag it here. And let's bring in one of the robots now. Double click, We'll bring in robot green. And this one, we want to bring in composition, retain layer sizes. We don't have to check create composition because it's actually going to create one on its own, and we'll see it over in that project area. So I'll hit OK. And do not merge layers, right? Just keep it like this. Composition, retain layer sizes, editable layer styles. I don't have any layer styles on there. Sometimes you can, maybe have a drop shadow or something like that, and you can bring those in with you into After Effects. So notice when these come in over here, right? Can I zoom in here? No. It came in as a composition and a folder. And why this came in as a composition is because it has its own timeline. I'm going to double click on it, but then I'm gonna show you what happens. We'll double click. You see how it opens up here in the main window, and this is its tab. Main movie is now over here. So be careful that you're working intentionally in the composition you want. Eventually, we're going to create some blinks, a wave within this timeline, right? And so we need these layers, but we're not going to use them right now. I'm going to hit cancel. So I'm going to just close this out. And one thing I forgot to do when we were coming in is the length, okay? So the composition of our main movie is only 10 seconds, and I want it to actually be 30. So this is a good exercise, because if you shrink a composition, everything shrinks down with it. But if you lengthen one, you have to go in manually and make sure everything is the right length it needs to be. So I'm going to change this to 30 seconds, because this is our main movie, and I want a certain amount of time that you could do what we're going to do and then add to it within the same comp. And hit OK. So now we're going to make sure that everything is stretched out. So you see what happened? This moon background, it only, it did not stretch with it. So I'm going to stretch that back out to 30 seconds. The fact that our robot composition, I'm going to go composition settings, is only 10 is actually fine. All those robots, we only want 10 seconds. We could eventually lengthen them out if we wanted to, but for now, those are fine. The composition lengths of your characters does not have to match the whole length of your movie unless they're going to be on that frame the entire time. Right? If you need to stretch it, you can. Right? Say we want to make this, I'll do it right now. Say we want to make robot green 20 seconds. So I'll go robot green 20, hit return, but then look what happens when I double click on robot green and I bring this little thing here. You'll see that all the visibility is only within 10 seconds. So I could go all the way to the end, and I'm showing you this now because sometimes things just might disappear and you don't have any idea why. And this is what could be happening. I'm going to grab each layer and to option open bracket. It's sort of like those square brackets, and that stretch those out. Okay, now I'm going to go back to main movie. And you can see more information about these over here, right? Now, if we want to bring robot back to 10 seconds, that'd be fine because it just squashes it back down to 10. But anytime you lengthen, make sure that those comp layers are the length that you want them to. All right, so let me just bring this back down to 10. Composition settings. Because now whatever we bring in will be 10, and that's what we want. Double click, robot red, composition, retain layer size, okay, okay. Again, 10 seconds, and we'll grab that baby. Okay, so they're all 10 seconds, right? So maybe they get 10 seconds of screen time. We could also, say they have 10 seconds in the beginning and they do whatever they need to do, and say they come back later in the timeline, right? You could just drag that comp down again as a different version of it and do some different acting down there. So now let's bring down, so you can see here, right, composition, it's a widely used concept, but it has anything with a timeline, anything that needs to be animated, and we want to make sure, we want to use compositions to their to your own advantage. Whatever you do, you don't want to do all your animating on this main timeline. You don't want all the robot parts down there. You want to work with the robot composition down here, but if you want to do any digging into it, you would do that on the robot's timeline if you want to do animation within there. So what does that mean? I'm going to bring the red robot composition down and make sure it's over the background layer. Okay, so this main comp here, it's almost like one layer, which is great because we don't want to have to scale back each arm, each leg, right? So when I untwirl this and I see the transform tools, I can see the different parameters that I could work with. And if I just want to change the base size of something or the starting position or the starting size, I don't add a keyframe yet. I just can change the values right here. So say I want this smaller. I could scale this down like it's coming in from the background. The position, right, I could move left or right. I could also drag this manually, and it's going to update these parameters here, or these values here. But no keyframes are added yet. Okay, so this is working with the composition as a whole, right, out here, and that's very helpful. But how would I animate the arm eventually, right? So what I would then do, and I'll eventually duplicate this robot red file and make it a robot red wave, and I'll just do a short wave animation, and that way I could bring that in and loop it however many times I needed to, and that's so I wouldn't have to keep again redoing that same animation over and over again. So let me do a little bit of that now. So I'm going to hit Command D and robot red underscore wave. Okay, and we'll add a blink in here too. So here, all these layers are what you see in that Photoshop file, which is awesome. So which arm do we want to rotate? Let's rotate the right arm, and I'm going to scale this up. And we want to transform the rotation, but let's see what happens when we rotate it when the anchor point is in the center like this. It's not going to be the wave that we're looking for, right? Because that just makes it crazy. So we're going to double click into this arm right, get up close, and then let's just move this pan behind and then move that over to sort of where it would logically be on a anthropomorphic robot, right? Like a human robot. Or one that's based off of a human body, right? Like a C-3PO, as opposed to a BB-8. Okay, so now that anchor point is there, and when we go to rotate, it's going to rotate from there. And it's sort of disconnecting a little bit from the body. So I'm going to scooch its position a little bit inward so that when it rotates. And if that's the case, I probably want to bring in the arm left position a little bit to match that. And so I'm just working out some of those proportions. And we'll just rotate, we'll just wave with one arm. Okay. And we haven't even started the animation of that wave yet, but we're just making sure the anchor point's in the right place so it starts there. All right. So I'll get back to doing the actual wave later. I wanted to stick to the concept of compositions and working smartly within After Effects. Any element that you have that's going to move or animate or do something, bring it in as its own composition, right? So, a new character, a new spaceship, another baby, or a friend, or an enemy robot. Build that separately. Bring it into the project as a composition so that it too will have its own timeline. And keep your main movie just where those, like, each composition can come in as a clump and you can move it. It's like working modularly. Okay, and this is how you make sure that your project doesn't become a chaotic mess of like 100 layers where you're animating everything in a sequential way over time on one timeline. So a lot of flexibility within here, and a lot of concepts you're learning here would translate to lots of other animation programs, like working in a modular format. I think in my lectures, or at some point I talk about them creating a Ming Ming wave file, right, or a flying file, right? And any time that she would fly, they would get that flying comp and bring that in to a project, to another movie of a scene, and that way they weren't animating her flying every time they did a scene, right? That would be a comp, a fly comp that they would bring into their project, and when that was approved, so no one would have to think about it. It'd just be like, oh, that's the approved flying file, so that they could focus all their attention on new character development and new animation. Okay, so I'm not sure how I did, but I'm going to end the basics of compositions here at this point in terms of